Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. When I first saw Emily Miller's tweet where she asks, is he trying to taunt the sheriff? I headed immediately to the source, Hilaria's Instagram, but I couldn't find the images in question, and so I sort of dismissed it. It turns out they were in Hilaria's Instagram stories, which is separate from Instagram's main page. Emily Miller has since tweeted the original source where she found the series of images. There were some people who thought that she'd photoshopped them. So what do you think? Do you think Alec Baldwin is taunting the sheriff? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So I don't think the Baldwins are taunting the sheriff. But the tweets are definitely provocative, just as we know the Baldwins sometimes are. Both Alec and Elena have followers in the millions. Alec with well over 2 million and Elena with almost 1 million. That's over 3 million people they can influence between the two of them. That's a lot of people. And I think that is what they're actually trying to do. It's not so much taunting as influencing. And putting up these silly little cartoons and drawings and whatnot, nonsense basically. I think what they're doing on social media is trying to influence the people that follow them. That's what influencers do. They try to influence public opinion. And public opinion is quite important in order to decide, public opinion can put pressure on the authorities one way or the other. Pressure on the authorities to do something about the rush shooting, or pressure on the authorities to favor certain people, potentially. So I think when Baldwin tells millions of his followers that he's not worried about the phone issue and it's not a big deal, it's an attempt to minimize both the evidence and to some extent the investigation. His recent statement on Instagram on New Year's Day saying that he was going to get spiritual advice or input of some kind from spiritual personalities is possibly calculated to make him seem, if not remorseful, then appropriately contrite and introspective in some way. Baldwin also took the opportunity, I think, during that particular, or it might have been another Instagram post, to say, "I'm not afraid to say Helena's name," or words to that effect. During his interview with ABC News in early December, it was obvious how seldom he referred to Elena by name. When he spoke about, did she faint and all that sort of thing, he didn't really refer to her by name. When her injuries and her condition after she'd been shot had been described, when she was actually lying there and, the interviewer asked him, "Did you talk to her?" And he said he stood over her for about a minute. There was nothing about saying her name, nothing personal like that. And this sort of distancing is commonly observed in true crime. In my opinion, if you look at both his Instagram and hers over the past 3 months, since this incident happened, it really looks and feels like both of them simply want to go back to life as normal. And you might say, what's wrong with that? Why not? And I think, all things being equal, I think good legal and logical advice would have been to ask the Baldwins to stop, almost ask them to stop posting on social media until the investigation was complete, and instead contribute to the investigation. So instead of entertaining people and engaging with people on silly little issues, give kind of precedence, give preference, to give priority to the investigation, right? Isn't that important? Isn't someone's life more important? And, instead of using your phone to make silly posts, give it to the authorities and take them through what's on it. Guide them. Say, I think this is quite important. Maybe you want to look at that. In other words, contribute to the investigation. And if you think about what has been going on, something happens on social media and everyone goes there and that makes the news. And even Helena's been making statements about the aftermath. The journalist did this and I want to stand up for that. It it amounts to a distraction from the important information that is coming out in terms of what was said, what was done, what are the facts of this case. Does that make sense? So, of course, if any culpability is on the cards, one can understand a scenario we often see in true crime, which is delay, deny, minimize, and obfuscate. The more time that you allow to go by, the harder it is to maintain focus and concentration and to keep juggling all the balls. When I write a book on true crime, I need to do it very, very quickly, because the longer you take, the easier it is to forget what you already know. And it's almost like a train. It gathers momentum, but that train can also lose momentum. And the longer you take to do an investigation, the longer you take to research something beyond a certain point, it can lose momentum and it can lose impetus. And so it is certainly in the defense case, it is to their benefit to delay, to deny, to minimize and obfuscate, because it makes it harder to maintain that focus, to maintain that energy. And bear in mind, it requires resources to investigate a case. It requires money and time. And not everyone has unlimited money and time. And of course, a defendant can draw the process out longer and longer and longer, which uses up resources and can interfere with the motivation to prosecute, if that makes sense. So I think that is the real question that the authorities are asking. Is there culpability? Who is culpable? And if so, to what extent? Right now, the producers of Rust are facing 2 lawsuits, and a third is being directed at the ammo supplier. You wouldn't know this to look at the Baldwin's Instagram accounts. Helena's husband, until now, has maintained a discreet silence. Is that going to change? So I'm not going to take it further than that. I'm going to be putting up the appropriate section in the Hannah Gutierrez Reed suit that deals with the in-church scenario, given what she said to her lawyers and how her lawyers have presented it in the affidavit. That is meant to be juxtaposed with episode number 6 in that global recap of the Rust production, specifically what happened inside the church. I will also be going to the suits from Mamie Mitchell and Serge Svetnoy, where they describe those incidents as well. So you've got essentially 4 different versions of events. You've got the version from Baldwin given on ABC News. You've got Hannah's version in her suit, Serge's version, he was a witness, and Mamie Mitchell. And you get a very clear, concise idea of everything when you put all those 4 together. As a kind of companion to this particular episode, asking this question about taunting and influencing, I'm going to be putting up another episode asking, what is the real question in the Baldwin case? A lot of people have been saying the only question is, how did a live round get on set? Do you think that is the real question? If it's not, what is the real question? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.